please, we welcome to have a further discussion on that if that's of interest to you. Thank you.
Okay, maybe Norma would like to pursue the discussion, then we don't have to be funding you. Okay, I think this morning and afternoon, this session has been, I think, very, very good and very engaging. They have been very constructive, productive. We have exchanged a lot of ideas. I'm sorry that we spent too much time on this public transport aspect of one central body and the national transport policy. But I think overall, there's a lot of substance and content. I think we should not stop here. We should pursue, even on the ECGD financing that's offered by the British government to the British companies that want to participate in Malaysian projects. And I think these are all available. And for some of the companies that are here, maybe you should look at those for further discussion and see what can be done. Okay, thank you. We now adjourn for lunch. Bon appetit.
Everybody, lunch will be served in Carlton 6, which is on the second.
That's really key to everything that happens afterwards. People have to communicate ideas, to communicate information. What's the best way to do that? One of the reasons for having good communication is to make sure you get good coordination and make sure the interfaces between packages are managed. You have to communicate well to get that information across between organisations, between disciplines, and also to make sure spatial coordination in the design is handled properly. That's one of the key areas for cost overruns on any major project. We talked yesterday quite a lot about change control. We'll come back to that in a little bit of detail later on. And approvals. Sustainability is one of the key agenda items as the public particularly interested in any major project is how sustainable is it for the future. I want to talk a bit about how we measure progress in a yes or no type question rather than estimate of where we think we might be. A bit more about optimising designs, make sure we get best value for money. Something about procurement approach. And I'll finish up with looking at some of the constructability issues that we face on major projects and how to address some of those concerns. So, solutions to some of those issues. Actually, communication is very simple. It's all about talking face to face if possible. As long as you can talk face to face, you see the body language, you understand people much more clearly. And that's really the key to it. If you can manage that on a regular basis, then you've got most of your problems solved. That can be difficult to arrange if you've got people in different offices or different parts of the world. Very often, co-location in one office for a major project is the best answer to allow that to happen in the best way. So, promote your communications through having the right team structure, the right people in place, people who can communicate properly. Partnering is another good way to make sure people align their values and actually communicate very well with each other, having done so. And certainly some of the big projects we've worked on have found that to be very successful. Informal gatherings as well. This is something that we've picked up on a number of jobs. If you can actually get people together in a social environment, you can actually break down some of the barriers, some of the relationships can really be helped through that sort of event. One thing I want to talk about in the communication is how we communicate ideas in 3D. 3D drawings and sketches prove to be very effective. This is an example from Crossrail in London. We have here a station being built underneath these existing buildings. It's quite hard to see what's really going on there. Look at engineering drawings, still quite hard to see all the interfaces. You can see the section at the bottom is quite complicated. If we actually move to a 3D view of that, you can actually really see the relationship with all these different parts of the scheme. Things start to become much clearer. So looking at things in 3D really does help to understand problems. You can communicate ideas much better. Just very quickly, if I may, show some other ways of doing 3D communication. This is not a video, this is actually a live model of a structure that we're doing on a project in Hong Kong. This This is having to build new railway tunnels underneath an existing structure. The existing structure looks like that. We have to take these piles, foundations out of the way. So what I want to do is to get a way to communicate the solution, the difficulties and the solution of this problem to other people. So we made this very simple model, which took about 2 days of effort to do. Allows us to go through the sequence of construction, and we can look at this at any angle, any view we want to understand it and explain to all the stakeholders how it actually works. We go through a sequence of construction and explain that very clearly. In fact, the solution is that we have these little orange jacks, which jack off a new structure, lift up the roof, and we can build a new structure underneath it, cutting away existing piles, building a new structure through there to find a finished solution. And this very simple 3D model allows us to explain to all the stakeholders, the existing structure owners, the people who are affected by the construction, exactly what we're going to do, and exactly how they'll be affected by it. So a very effective way to get ideas across, a very clear way, much clearer than trying to use 2D drawings, for example. Moving on to coordination issues. How to ensure good coordination in any project. Key to it is to use a coherent model of the whole project. So traditionally we've used CAD models for that. We're moving on now to use more BIM models, which are actually a 3D CAD model of the whole project. This is an example of Dubai Metro, where we've done the design in 3D. So this is the building services in one of the stations in Dubai. And the whole design was done using some software called Revit, which allows you to actually pick out the elements of the design and make sure they fit within the structure. So all your spatial coordination issues are resolved. You guarantee that it will fit. You don't have problems with clashes with the structure, with the architecture, building services. They fit together because you've designed it in 3D in the first place. Believe me, spatial coordination on site during construction is really a big issue. Traditionally, that's been one of the key causes of cost overruns on a job and program delays, in fact. Hopefully that should be a thing of the past if we adopt approaches like this. Moving on to interface management. I talked a little bit yesterday about how important interface management was in terms of controlling cost overruns at those interfaces. How do we do that? Well, typically we try to do quite a detailed requirement specification for each interface, using a flowchart type approach to identify who's responsible for what dates they have to achieve their actions by, put some damages on so that people have to pay damages if they fail to achieve their action by the required date, and then present it all in a simple flowchart so they can understand exactly what's required. And in doing so, we do want to retain flexibility as far as possible, because removing flexibility costs money for the contractors and they'll charge more because of that. So we need to make sure everyone's clear what they have to do, but give them enough space, as much space as possible to deliver those requirements in a cost-effective way. Change control. Change control systems are really an essential part of a job. If you don't have them, you lose control. I think we heard yesterday a discussion between Marcus and Ian, how they run their change control system, and that is a really key part, again, of controlling costs and making sure that although change is inevitable, it's done in a controlled manner. I'll show you, this is a rather exaggerated example, but you see here that there's a house which has got a balcony on it, and in fact, when they built the balcony, they had forgotten to worry about the railway which is underneath there, so perhaps that change was one that wasn't desirable in terms of the design of that particular building. Moving on to approvals, this was a job in Hong Kong. An awful lot of approvals needed for this particular job. This was actually the reclamation project in the centre of Hong Kong. All these different government bodies, utility bodies, private building owners had to consult them and get their agreement to the scheme. So very challenging. How did we do that? Well, start talking early and continue talking all the way through the job. So there's no surprises for anybody all the way through the whole process. Again, it's back to communication. Communicate well all through the job, and you can eliminate so many problems. Key thing is to avoid surprises, both for the people you're consulting with and also for the design team, because they want to know at the start how they'll be affected. The design team and the project managers want to know at the end whether they're going to have to make any changes, because the last thing they want is late changes. So successful in the end in getting that approval. Quick word on sustainability. Actually, sustainability is more about state of mind. It's about thinking in a sustainable way, right from the start, making sure your project is taken forward in a way which allows you to find sustainable solutions. And if you start with that frame of mind, very often you get quite easy answers. One of the things that we use within Atkins as well, we have a suite of carbon design tools. I'll just dip very quickly into that if I may. So this is actually on our web portal. This is something that our design teams and our project management teams use all the time. This is a live website I'm looking at. So we have all these different tools for helping us to assess the carbon impact of our projects. This one is about calculating and evaluating the carbon content of the individual elements of a project, for example, concrete, steel, reinforcement, excavation, and so on. So we can actually calculate very quickly the carbon footprint of the project and compare options to see which one has the lowest carbon footprint. Another example here, this is to do with analysing the carbon emissions for traffic within a certain area. So again, you can compare different scenarios within a traffic model to see what the carbon footprint of that will be. Continuing with looking at progress, how often have you asked someone whether a job is finished and they say, oh, 95% done, only a little bit to go? Have you ever heard that? Yes. It's usually a myth. The last 5% takes as long as the first 95%. So we don't want to measure progress in that way, it's totally unreliable. The question to ask is it complete, yes or no? And so what we do in an earned value measurement process is to identify discrete measurable activities. It may be a report that's been submitted, it may be a piece of work that's been completed on site, whatever it is, it's yes or no, is it finished or is it not? And that way you actually measure real progress rather than estimated progress, which is totally unreliable. It doesn't tell you how long it will take to complete something. So don't accept this 95% complete answer from anybody. I talked yesterday about value engineering. I'll just talk a little bit more about how to get good results from that and the sort of structured approach that is really essential to do so. So there are a number of phases of the job plan, as we call it in value engineering, starting with looking at what the problem is, trying to find solutions to that within a workshop environment which encourages free thinking and new ideas, thinking out of the box to find new solutions. Those are then evaluated and then developed to see whether in fact we have some better solutions. And very often you can find actually some great answers if you allow people to think freely without worrying too much about whether it's been done before or how difficult it is. Just allow people space to think, and it's amazing what sort of creative ideas can be generated. A quick example here from the job on the West Island line in Hong Kong. This was the preliminary design for the ventilation system on this station. Really very complex. Lots of underground adits, difficult parts to construct in soft ground. So we asked ourselves whether there was a better way. We identified there was a temporary adit which was running next to the station. We had an idea to use that as part of our ventilation system. So what we did was add a new shaft under this building which we're proposing to build anyway, and then reroute ventilation using this temporary adit. Very quickly we could see that we could eliminate lots of difficult parts of the construction ground level, eliminate some vent buildings, eliminate some underground vent ducts, and eliminate a vent shaft over here. So a lot of stuff was deleted. We also found that we could eliminate one of our passenger adits simply by swinging the structure around a bit. The result of all this was savings in cost and program, reduced construction risk, less public impact. So simply by allowing people to think about possible alternative solutions and making use of some temporary works in a permanent manner, we had all these big benefits which came out of that. Moving on to procurement, there's a range of different procurement options, some of which we discussed yesterday. It's just a different way of looking at the same issue, across from the traditional public sector procurement process, which has a more detailed design approach to full build, own, operate, fully privately owned solution. So what this is showing is the level of public responsibility being higher on the left, private responsibility being higher on the right. But I would suggest it's also worth considering the fact that it's not just public and private responsibility, it's the degree of input that the client has to have, the degree of control that the client feels they need in these projects. So if you want to have more client control over the finished product, you need probably to be over on the left-hand side in terms of procurement approach. If you're happy to leave that to private sector, you're going to be more on the right-hand side. So it's a matter of where you want to be as a client in terms of how much control you want on the finished product. A lot of it's also to do with risk allocation. There are different ways to look at risk allocation within a project, within a contract, within a procurement method. At one extreme, you can put everything onto the contractor and try and get a single lump sum price for all risks. It's possible to do that if you write the contract appropriately, depending on the legal environment you work within. But you tend, of course, to pay a high price for that because you're asking the contractor to guess what might go wrong and price for it from the very beginning. That's not normally the best value for money for the client. You usually get better value for money if you share things out. Because if you really feel happy to take all the risk yourself, you can certainly get a low price from the contractors, but you end up with high risk that you have to deal with. In case things go wrong, you have to pay the price anyway. So a lot of clients now are looking at allocating risk by the ability to mitigate that risk. For example, in target cost contracting, the risk allocation can be negotiated at the tender stage. So you can actually agree with the tenderers which risk you want them to take, which risk you want to take, and you can then see that their prices for that brief risk and see what's giving you best value for money. This is how target cost contracts work. I think I'll leave it for another day. A little bit complicated. Risk management. Again, we talked yesterday about how important it is to deal with risks at as early a stage as possible within the contract process. If you deal with them at feasibility stage, very simple to mitigate that risk. If you deal with it later, the impact of the risk is high, the cost could be very high, the program impact high, and your opportunity to minimise those risks is really gone by that stage. You face with the worst possible scenario. So identify the risks as early as possible. We use a sort of structured approach to identify and classify risks, quantify and grade them. Grade them in this sort of manner, looking at the impact of an individual risk from very small impact to a very large impact, and then the likelihood of the risk from not very likely at all to something that's very likely to happen. So if you have a risk that's catastrophic and it's very likely, clearly you're in a scenario that's unacceptable. And that's the situation which you can't have on a project. You've got to get rid of those risks. The risks in this red zone need to be eliminated or mitigated substantially. And you go through the whole process in a similar manner, looking at grading those risks. And once you've identified which ones are acceptable, you're okay in the green area. The red ones you have to deal with through mitigation or elimination. The ones that are still there in the yellow zone probably are ones that need to be monitored continually by an individual risk owner. So the responsibility is very clear for dealing with that risk. I think I showed this one yesterday. Anyway, no, I didn't, sorry. This is just to highlight the fact that risks change as projects proceed. Things change. You need to be very careful that the information is still the same, but you've still got the parachute on your back instead of a bag of sandwiches if you're falling out of a plane. So continue to monitor risks throughout the project. Make sure things are kept under review at all stages. Don't assume there's no change since the last time you looked at it. And the ones that you cannot mitigate or eliminate, you need to consider what the possible follow a line like that. But your overall estimate may come down as you're drawing down on the contingency fund and reducing the amount of money you need to retain in the contingency fund because your risks have already been addressed. So on a well-run project, you'll see the base estimate may be increasing, but the overall money you've got to keep in your pot, including contingency, should be coming down as you get to the end. Looking briefly at constructability, key issues here to make sure we can minimise the impact on the public. These railway schemes in particular have major impacts when you're doing cut and cover works. You can see here sort of large excavation that's quite common in this sort of scheme. For utilities, for example, you can get some very big holes in the ground for one pipe. You can see the size and the width and the depth of the trench here for accessing one pipe. I think this was in Dubai. Utility locations are never certain. If you find a problem, it could have a big impact on the scheme. Some very messy holes in the road here, which obviously have a big impact on the public and could take some time to resolve if you have to identify the design solution on site. So plan the works carefully and obviously try to mitigate and minimise any utility impacts. Underground stations, this is cut and cover works for big station in Dubai. This is a huge impact on the road. This big dual carriageway has been completely closed to allow the station to be built. In some cases you can divert traffic to one side, but it's quite hard to do that. There are special ways of doing it though. I'll come to that in a second. Cut and cover tunnels similarly usually occupy at least half the big road to do that. This is one of the ways you can reduce the impact, or actually two ways you can reduce the impact of big cut and cover works on a busy road. On the left-hand side here, this is using top-down construction. So what we'll do is shift the traffic to one side, build half of the top slab of our station to start with. We then backfill that, put the traffic back over the top of it, build the other half of the top slab of the station, and then we can build underneath that top slab with the road reopened. So the impact is relatively minor and relatively short. And all the construction can then proceed underneath that with much less impact. If we look at the right-hand side, this is a slightly different solution, but again it mitigates the impact considerably. What we do here is put some sidewalls in to support a temporary deck. So these are piles which will support a temporary deck. We're moving the traffic around to allow this to be built. We have a short closure to put the temporary deck in. We then reopen the road very quickly, probably literally a few days later. And then we come in from the side underneath the deck and build our station with the traffic running quite safely over our heads. So these are the sort of strategies that you'd want to use if you have cut and cover works on a busy road. Other options would be to look at building your tunnels in a heading or a mine station, perhaps with the concourse offline, out of the busy area. This depends on how deep your station is and also on the ground conditions, but it can be very successful. Just an issue on TBM tunnels, because very often ideal solution for tunneling is really to use a TBM, which is a tunnel boring machine, which doesn't require the road to be opened. When you get to a station box, you have to consider the interaction of that tunnel boring machine with the station box. So there are two cases really. One where the station excavation is in advance of the tunnel boring machine. And what we did in Dubai quite successfully was to drive the tunnel boring machine into the station box, pull it through the station, and relaunch it to the other side. The stations then have to be made a bit deeper and a bit larger to allow the tunnel boring machine to fit through. So something had to be designed right from the very start to allow the contractor to build it large enough to allow that to happen. The alternative would be you have to build a shaft outside the station box